When MGM adapted The Wizard of Oz, they made a major change that recontextualized the material. In the original book series, the Land of Oz was real, but in the film version, the Land of Oz was a dream. Moreover, most of the major characters that lived in the Land of Oz were just representations of people Dorothy saw day to day in the real world. Rather, in her dream, Dorothy is able to see the archetypes that lie behind the material versions of the people around her. Perhaps unintentionally, the movie evokes a narrative where Dorothy dives into the collective unconscious and journeys through her own psyche. Oscar-winning editor Walter Murch, the director of Return to Oz, essentially seizes on the implications of the MGM version, and in a way, remakes it while tonally inverting it. This is particularly obvious in the way that he actually builds the movie around Dorothy's psychology from the outset. In order to build a framework for analyzing this movie, there are some key ideas I'd like to reference. The collective unconscious is one I've already referenced. It's essentially a shared consciousness of humanity that's populated with instincts and archetypes. Jung particularly denoted archetypes as being primal symbols like the shadow, the great mother, the tree of life, and more. Jung viewed the self as the central archetype that oversees the individuation process. Archetypes in essence refer to universal and recurring mental images and themes that manifest in myths, fairy tales, and other art across cultures. Since The Wonderful Wizard of Oz is a fairy tale, it's particularly ripe as material for this kind of exploration. If you'd like to go deeper down this rabbit hole, I'd recommend reading Interpretation of Fairy Tales by the Jungian scholar Marie-Louise von Franz. But here I'd at least like to quote a passage from her book that drives my point home further. Just as for a dream, we divide the archetypal story into the 4 stages of the classic drama, beginning with the exposition, time and place. In fairy tales, time and place are always evident because they begin with once upon a time or something similar, which means in timelessness and spacelessness, the realm of the collective unconscious. For example, some tales begin with, far beyond the end of the world and even beyond the 7 Dog Mountains there was once a king. At the end of the world, where the world comes to an end with a wall of boards. In the time when God still walked about on Earth. To further our framework, I'd like to pull in an ancient theory that's quite complementary to Jung's ideas, specifically from the philosopher Plato.
Plato was gay?
Plato? Mickey Mouse's dog was gay?
One of Plato's most famous theories is the realm of ideals. From Wikipedia, the theory suggests that the physical world is not as real or true as forms. According to this theory, forms, conventionally capitalized and also commonly translated as ideas, are the non-physical, timeless, absolute, and unchangeable essences of all things, of which objects and matter in the physical world are merely imitations. In Return to Oz specifically, I'd argue that Oz as a story world makes an excellent arena to represent the realm of ideals. And the central battle of the movie is about who essentially rules the realm of ideals and how to have a relationship with it. The last theory I'd like to draw into our framework is that of the magic circle by Johann Huizinga. As he puts it, all play moves and has its being within a playground marked off beforehand, either materially or ideally, deliberately or as a matter of course. Just as there is no formal difference between play and ritual, so the consecrated spot cannot be formally distinguished from the playground. The arena, the card table, the magic circle, the temple, the stage, the screen, the tennis court, the court of justice, etc. are all in form and function playgrounds, i.e. forbidden spots, isolated, hedged round, hallowed, within which special rules obtain. All are temporary worlds within the ordinary world, dedicated to the performance of an act apart. In other words, the magic circle encompasses art in the way it frames movies, books, TV shows, and games, as all being part of an arena of play for the observer. A story is also a game, being played with the audience. Influential screenwriter and author John Truby similarly ties play to film. The storyteller is first and foremost someone who plays. Stories are verbal games the author plays with the audience. They keep no score. The studios, networks, and publishing houses do that. I'd liken the Land of Oz essentially also to a magic circle, a hallowed, forbidden playground for Dorothy with its own rules, albeit an eternal one rather than a temporary one. On average, a good movie will tend to use its opening and closing shots as symbolic bookends to convey the thematic transformation that occurs over the course of the film. For example, Scorsese's Shutter Island, a film about a man trying to solve a mystery at an insane asylum, begins with an image of a boat emerging from fog on a cloudy day. The film ends with a shot of a lighthouse beneath a clear open sky. Lighthouses innately provide illumination to guide boats, and there are no more clouds to obfuscate the sky. Over the course of the film, the mysteries have been made lucid and clear. In Return to Oz, the opening image fantastically lays out the story's themes. Our very first shot is a beautiful and mystical sky that's then revealed to be contained within the frame of Dorothy's house, more specifically her room. Not just that, but it's contained within a mirror. The movie hinges on the opposition between the spiritual and the material, which this shot wonderfully elucidates. Notably, the movie ends with Dorothy leaving her home and her room to go out into the world. Additionally, the opening shot occurs at night while the closing shot occurs in the day. The film layers yet another bookend onto the final shot by showing at the beginning of the film Dorothy's new home under construction. Initially, Dorothy is home, but home is incomplete because Dorothy herself is unbalanced. Then after Dorothy undertakes her journey, home is finally complete, because she's complete. The conflict Dorothy goes through at the outset of the movie actually sometimes crops up in Campbellian mythmaking. When the hero returns from a heavenly realm, they face a crossroads between surrendering to the material aspect of the world they return to, or achieving a full integration between the spiritual and material. This beat is also sometimes called atonement on the journey home. At the beginning of the film, Dorothy's salience of the psychic world of Oz threatens her ability to actually be present in the real world.
It's been 6 months since the tornado, and Dorothy hasn't been herself since. I'm taking her to Cottonwood Falls tomorrow, see if she can be helped. All she ever talks about is someplace that just doesn't exist. Talking tin men, walking scarecrows, ruby slippers.
So the journey she needs to take is one where she's able to balance the psychic and material worlds. Naturally, the material world reacts violently by trying to eliminate her psychic world. When Dorothy's aunt takes her to Dr. Worley to receive therapy, the movie slips in a great little signpost for how Dorothy is entering yet another new world when she alludes to how she's never been past the limits of her familiar Kansas terrain.
I've never been past Franklin before.
When Dorothy arrives at Dr. Worley, for most of the scene a clock is ticking, as if the whole space itself is lifeless, mechanical.
The Tin Woodsman used to be made of flesh, like everybody else. But then he cut off his leg. He had a tin leg made, but then a witch enchanted his axe, and he kept on cutting off all the other parts of his body, until he was all made of tin. Even his head was...
That's all right, Dorothy.
As the doctor introduces Dorothy to the electrotherapy machine, he comments that
The brain itself is an electrical machine. It's nothing but a machine. When it malfunctions, a blow to the head, for example, then the brain produces useless excess currents. And these excess currents are our dreams and delusions. And wouldn't you know, madam,
when Dorothy looks at the machine, Murch places Dorothy in the eyeline of Ozma within that reflection created by the machine. The reflection symbolically seems to be created by the professor's materialistic comments and Dorothy's encounter with the machine, as if the machine's causing her to become newly salient of her self-image. It also places the film directly in conversation with the onset of modern materialism and determinism that correlated with the emergence of Freudian theory in the early 20th century. Notably, Dr. Worley is even styled to look like Sigmund Freud. When Dorothy finally meets Ozma later on, Ozma introduces herself by saying,
This is for you. Thank you. It's Halloween soon. I know.
Now obviously in a fashion, this little aside sets up Jack Pumpkinhead's presence later in the movie, but commenting on the symbolism of Halloween, it's a time when material bodies are veiled, when children can express their psychological self-images through masks, when fantasy becomes reality. Halloween is an emblem of the journey that ensues. Later that night, a thunderstorm strikes, becoming the perfect catalyst for Dorothy's return to Oz. After all, Dr. Worley posited that electricity is all a human being is. Electricity is his proposed cure to a child's dreams. Electricity, for him, is the future. So it only makes sense for a thunderstorm to enter the mythic landscape as an archetypal event. When Dorothy escapes the institution, she's carried to Oz by a body of water. Quite often, bodies of water become symbols of the collective unconscious. Emotions, thoughts, memories, life, death, rebirth, all can be encapsulated by the symbolism of water. Both of these natural elements are also reflexively bookended later in the film. When Dorothy plays the Gnome King's game, the transformations are represented by flashes of lightning, and while playing the game, Dorothy hears thunder booming. And when she returns to Kansas, her transition home is represented by water that's then, through editing, connected to her eye, the locus of herself. When Dorothy returns to Oz, she's accompanied by her chicken Belina, and she befriends a mechanical soldier, Tick-Tock, who seems to represent the electrotherapy machine in her consciousness. And the three of them wind up captured by the witch Mombi, who works for the Gnome King, a powerful being who stripped the Emerald City of its jewels and sealed away Ozma, the Princess of Oz. Also notably, we're introduced to Mombi in a room made of mirrors, adding to the significance of mirrors and reflections within the symbol web of the film. It's in Mombi's castle they discover Jack Pumpkinhead. I can also now further talk about the triangle between Dorothy, Pumpkinhead, and Ozma.
Mombi was about to destroy me with her stick, but she decided to test some powder of life she just bought from a magician. She did. It worked. Here I am.
While Mombi gave life to Jack, Ozma built him. So in a fashion you could say they're both archetypical mothers, even though Ozma is still a child.
Mom! My real mom!
In which case, if Ozma is the platonic ideal of Dorothy, then Dorothy would also be Jack's mother.
Dorothy, may I call you Mom, even if it isn't so?
Another little thing I want to comment on about Mombi as the Great Mother is that when Dorothy steals the powder of life to escape, she seems to be stealing a motherly quality from Mombi, who represents the shadow of the mother. After all, only mothers can give birth to children. So Dorothy, Ozma, and Mombi form an interesting triad about motherhood. What's additionally interesting about Mombi is that she represents the archetype behind Nurse Wilson, who works for Dr. Worley, being played by the same actress. Mombi wants to steal the heads of other women not just because she wants their beautiful faces. It also reflects a desire by Nurse Wilson to steal the psyches of her patients. The head is, after all, a locus for the brain, the psyche, and the self. More directly, she wants Dorothy's head. Similar to Worley, she may also harbor a desire to reclaim childhood innocence. Dorothy then takes her friends to the Gnome King's castle to confront him, rescue the Scarecrow, and save Oz. When she meets him, he invites her to play a game wherein if she wins, she essentially gets to take the Scarecrow with her, but if not, she and her friends will remain as pawns in the Gnome King's collection. What's interesting about the Gnome King is that he reveals the Doctor to actually be a mirror image in a narrative sense, not the platonic sense, to Dorothy. He himself is a child at heart, but one that wants his adult sense of reason to control a world he can't easily access anymore. The psychic world, the world of the spirit, the soul, the ethereal, the ephemeral. He tries to atomize it the same way he atomizes Dorothy by telling her that electrical currents are all she is. His atomizing behavior is also exhibited in the game he makes Dorothy play, where he challenges her to give new life to the subjects that he's atomized into being objects. But the fact that he still enjoys games is proof that he's a child at heart.
You and your friends can play a little game. And I bet that you get the Scarecrow back after all.
Something else very important in my opinion is the fact that Dorothy treats the game she plays as a game. She doesn't attempt to reason her way through it. She initially treats it like Marco Polo, hence the spinning motion, and her spontaneous curiosity leads her to pick the emerald. In certain respects, a child can embrace a game as a game because they're able to do it unself-consciously. They can embrace the state of play purely, which gives her the edge in playing the game with the Gnome King. During the game, when Tick-Tock cries for Dorothy, knowing he may never speak to her again, that really cements her victory over the materialism of machines. She's given the machine a heart, perhaps echoing the Tin Woodsman. Another important aspect of the climax is the revelation that the Gnome King was able to take over Oz because Dorothy abandoned the ruby slippers.
They just fell out of the sky one day. You were so anxious to get home.
She was so eager to regain home that she surrendered her way of walking in the collective unconscious. The whole movie kind of revolves around a battle for a way of walking in the world as symbolized by the ruby slippers. When Dorothy walks in them, she's able to adorn the world of psyche, childhood fantasy, with beauty and life. But when the Gnome King / Dr. Worley walks in them, he strips the beauty and life away from the world of the psyche, calcifies it, objectifies it. He's a king made of stone who wants to capture the beauty and power of the psychic world through his reason / objectification. In the film, Ozma might be said to be the platonic ideal of Dorothy, since she's bound to the mirrors of Mombi's castle as an indistinct blur, perhaps as a symptom of the way Dr. Worley is attempting to kill Dorothy's connection to her childish imagination. When Dorothy is able to triumph over the Gnome King, Dr. Worley's mirror image in the realm of platonic ideals, and reclaim her way of walking in the world, she's able to liberate Ozma from the mirror castle into a shape of lucidity, and the final scene of the film doubles down on Ozma as Dorothy's reflection through a farmhouse mirror. A complete arc from the time Dorothy first saw herself as Ozma in the mirror of the machine. Dorothy is a human being. She needs to live in the material world, but she also needs an archetypal self that's able to represent her in the realm of fantasy, of dreams, of ideals. And Dorothy has salience of that self, but she's also able to live in the real world as a real woman. At the extreme of living in the material world, Dr. Worley sacrifices himself on the altar of progress.
The clinic was hit by lightning. It burned to the ground. Everybody was rescued except Dr. Worley. He ran into rescue his machines.
And his representation in the realm of ideals, the Gnome King is poisoned by the very essence of new life, of creation itself, an egg from Bellina. To someone like him, the pure spontaneity of creation is anathema to the rigid, locked-down world he's attempting to create through reason.
Don't you know that eggs are poison?
Poison indeed.
Poison. Poison to gnomes.
Another subtle through-line in the film is that Dorothy is constantly being confined in spaces by other people. She's confined in the institution by Nurse Wilson and Dr. Worley. She's driven to a chamber by the Wheelers. She's confined in Mommy's castle, and then she's confined inside the Gnome King's castle, which I believe lends significance to the line about Dorothy being able to have her own room.
It's nice to have a room of your own, isn't it?
She finally has her own self-image, her own self-possession, and her own ego integrity by the end of the film. This beat adds an extra shade of poignancy to Dorothy being able to leave her house to go out and play, to finally be balanced between the psychic and the material.